You're in the rant wormhole where I rant about whatever my $15 a month patrons pay me to rant about. You can be one of those by becoming one of those. This one's from Lord Liquid Bacon II, who says to rant about manga licensing and localization in the US. I can't say that I have like extremely detailed knowledge on this subject. However, I can talk about how the prices of manga have changed over time, how like the style of localization has changed over time. Like, I mean, obviously there's been a huge shift from like the 90s into the 2000s when we went from most manga being printed left to right, like re fucking formatted, and having like heavily localized translations like most of the time. Like, I would say all that shit quieted down in the mid 2000s, and like it was all about authenticity from that point forward. It was all about like trying to preserve as close to the original graphic novel as possible. Especially with Shonen Jump like leading the herd and like publishing their shit with all the author comments in it, and like the stuff that would come at the end of the volumes in Jump, in the fucking in the Tankoban. So like I think that by that point the manga industry was like healthy in terms of how stuff was localized and shit, and like the fact that Shonen Jump, like the stuff that they ran in the magazine would always be like $8 in the store as opposed to the $10 that most manga costed, was excellent. That was why like younger readers were getting into manga, is because they started with the cheaper shit that they could afford. But I think that eventually it became that like older teens were buying manga more than younger teens, because they had like, people were growing up exposed to it more and more, and like older teens have more disposable income in general, and like I think that they probably are buying more books, them and like young 20 somethings, and like because I know lots of people with manga collections who, would never have bought anime or anything like that. They might have a Crunchyroll subscription, but like they will go out and purchase manga, because you just see cool looking shit at the store and you pick it up, and if it looks good you might buy it. And that's always been an advantage that it has. As long as people are drawn over to the racks because they see like Attack on Titan or fucking Naruto or whatever they're over there for, they will notice that there's other shit there. And that's, I think, why more obscure books can catch on in the West, especially if they have cool looking covers, and, or popular stuff like Monster Girls, that like they published a million Monster Girl manga after fucking Monster Musume, because like people will just buy anything that has Monster Girls regardless of who wrote it. It's really fucking funny. Interviews with Monster Girls, my wife is a T-Rex, all this bullshit. So yeah, I think that the problem came when the global market crashed and people just weren't buying as much manga because people just don't have as much disposable income, I guess, in general. People aren't giving as much allowance to their kids. So, and Tokyo Pop was publishing too much shit. So they went under and all this shifting happened, and like ultimately the companies that prevailed were the ones who were just charging more. Like they were picking up titles that would have like strong cult followings, like, and I don't mean cult followings like extremely cult, but like, cult by American standards. So like Shugo Chara, like that's not really an obscure manga in Japan, I wouldn't think, but like over here it's not Sailor Moon, it's not that level of popularity. So, but like it's still kind of a sure thing to release this, when Peach Pits had other successful manga, and like, it's got strong shoujo art, but they put it out and they're charging like $12 a volume for it. And like they know people are gonna buy enough of it that it will, it will make the money back that was spent on it. But like it, they just have to charge a little bit more, and stuff like that is able to hold these companies afloat until people are buying manga again. And now that they've managed to get people comfortable with like a really high price, they're once again bringing over other stuff that like is not as much of a sure thing, as, you know, as a Peach Pit manga might have been when they put out Shugo Chara, but like is nonetheless like likely to catch on, like sells at work or something. Like everything Kodansha Comics has put out has been stuff that's like, this isn't a guarantee, but it has great odds, you know. Fire Force, well, Soul Eater was successful, so yeah, bring the next thing from the guy who wrote Soul Eater. And like, they aren't nearly as gussied up as manga used to be. That's the funny thing about it, is that like the mangas have gotten more expensive but also more streamlined. It's more like you feel as though you're paying for this stuff to be able to come to America, as opposed to paying for like getting this, you know, this very rich experience with all this extra shit in it. You're mostly just gonna like read through the manga and then get some ads at the end. You're not gonna get a bunch of like character sketches. I'm thinking of how like when I read King of Bandits Jing, there's like 10 pages of extra shit of like explaining the names of all the characters and how they relate to different fucking alcoholic beverages and shit like that. You don't see much of that anymore. But like, you do get just tons of good re-releases, you know, reformatting Bunko Bonds. Fucking light novels have caught on enough that Boogie Pop can come back after literally just dying. Maybe, I mean, fucking Nishio Scene came back after they had failed to push him, you know, Del Rey back in the late 2000s. So, like, it's possible that, you know, that things are just really healthy, and they're getting to at least be, like, as good as they were at the height in the 2000s, because, like, better stuff is getting brought over. They're not cannibalizing it so badly, and, like, they're still, you know, it's more than we had before. But, like, when I think about the manga industry in Japan, it makes me unable to get into manga, because I can't even fathom the depth of what I'm missing out on by not being able to read Japanese, because there's just so much manga. Like, it's such a vastly bigger medium, and most of the shit that we find out about, we only find out about because it's either in a really popular magazine that we're already reading for something else, or it gets an anime tie-in somewhere along the line, or it's like connected to a genre like Yuri, where like everybody knows everything that comes out. But like, you know, there's plenty of weird, interesting manga that I hear about that I don't get to read, and it's really upsetting because it seems like the stuff I would be the most into. So yeah, I wish that there was a crazy manga industry in America where just everything was getting published, but I realize that that's not likely and not healthy to want at this point in time. So yeah, that's your fucking rant.